2 of the American College of Rheumatology ACR 2021 Convergence, and that is the annual scientific conference that they host every year, and our organization, International Foundation for Autoinflammatory Arthritis, or AiArthritis for short, have been attending since I think 2013 every year. So like everyone else, we're here virtually, especially Deb, because she is.
I'm an old hand at
really
it.
Virtual there. Unless you're actually there, you're more the one who's there probably, right? With all those empty seats. So this is how we like to report back about the science that we're learning, the research that we're learning. We do it in the form of patient-led debriefs. So in saying that, we all go all day and we attend sessions just like we would if we were in person. And then at the end of the day, we would normally come back together, relax. Sometimes there's wine, sometimes there's coffee. In this case, wait for it. I got to do it again. Wait for it. This time I have pie. My husband brought pie home last night. So yesterday I had brought my wine, but that's normal. So when we are at the end of the day, we like to make this as real as possible. So we would be eating or something of that nature and disseminating the information that we have learned and bringing it to you. So we also have a program, we call it Go With Us to Conferences. We've been doing this for 2 years as a pilot program. This is the very last time, and we're going to take it as a real program, as a full-fledged program, as we go to UR in next year. But our organization, myself, Deb, Katie, everyone will introduce themselves in a second, also brought with us Stephanie and Effie. So we bring people with us so that our organization mission being to help other people living with our diseases have a voice alongside others as other stakeholders as equals. So together we can solve problems that impact education, advocacy, and research. We thought very fitting to bring other people in for that experience as well. So my name is Tiffany Westridge Robertson. I'm the CEO of the organization. I am diagnosed with axial spondyloarthritis, the non-radiographic version, and I'm going to turn it over to Deb. Oh, and I'm tuning in from St. Louis, Missouri. I didn't say that yesterday. I'm going to turn it over to Deb.
Hi, all. I am Deb Constein. I am a patient also living with rheumatoid arthritis, and I've had it since I was 13 years old, so 38 years into my journey. And the reason why I like doing these type of things so much, not only being a patient, but I graduated college with a double major in dietetics and biology, and it helps me understand all the lingo that we're going through. So I really enjoy everything, and I am tuning in from Madison, Wisconsin. All right, Katie, take it away.
Hello, everyone. I'm Katie Simons. I am the Senior Programs and Communications Manager at AiArthritis. I was also diagnosed with RA or JRA about 20 years ago, and I am reporting, I guess, from Metro Detroit, Michigan. How about Effie next?
Yeah, hi guys, I'm Effie Foliopoulos, and I was invited to go with AiArthritis for this conference for the first time. I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis when I was 18, so 17 years ago now. Yeah. Stephanie?
Sure. I'm Stephanie Alete, and I was invited by AiArthritis, and I'm so excited, so happy to be here. I've had ARAs or JRA since I was 5, so I'm really excited.
Where are you
and
at?
I'm reporting. Sorry, I forgot that. I'm reporting from Miami, Florida, where it's still warm.
And I'm reporting from the Midwest. Sorry, Chicago. So.
All right, we're all over. Look at us. No, we don't have a wet. Well, I did live in Los Angeles, California for 12 years, so we'll just pretend. I'll represent the West Coast too, I guess. So what we like to do here is, while we do share some information on social media, like a lot of other organizations, a lot of people reporting, what we really also enjoy doing is having conversations and talking as people living with the diseases who saw the sessions and disseminating that information back to all of you in easy to understand terminology, and also to open up the conversation, because at our organization, everything we do is led by conversations. And everything we choose to take on as an organization is first based always on patients having conversations. That's how we find out what's missing gaps, things that we still need to work on, and that moves forward in our process of problem solving. So it all starts here. So we're going to go ahead and dive in. We're going to talk about COVID. We're going to, again, if you tune into these, you're going to see themes have emerged. But what we review today will be different than what we reviewed yesterday, or what we'll review in the future. So COVID, precision medicine, health disparities, and I hope I said it. Was it an interdisciplinary approach? Is that what it was, Katie? Whew, I thought, oh my gosh, I may have done the wrong thing. Advocacy or public policy update. And then we've got an array of several different sessions that we all broke out to and went to that we're going to talk a little bit about. So let's go ahead and jump right in. We're going to go right into COVID. And I know Stephanie and I think Effie, or a couple people went to a session today on, it was called the SARS vaccination and update. Something you want to give us a little bit, start a little overview of what we learned from that one today.
Absolutely. That, I gotta say, was a very well done session, very informative, and had a lot of really important key takeaways. The first one that I thought was really good was that immunity, as far as vaccination immunity, right, is gradient. So we're like, what's she talking about? And it was basically that you have levels of immunity. So at the very bottom, you have the type of immunity that does not prevent hospitalization or death, right? And then it kind of rises up from symptomatic, but not so severe, to then mild symptomatic, asymptomatic, and then sterilizing immunity. And these are the levels of immunity that people can achieve, right? And the contributors to that is like antibody levels, antibody isotypes, all these stuff. But the main message with that was that there's no set level of immunity that's recommended. So one of the things that I thought was really interesting that she brought up, and she had like this little infographic, and it was basically like two little, you know, those figures that are bathroom signs, like the boy and the girl for the bathroom. She had like two of those, and then a quote bubble that said, "I got vaccinated, but I have low antibody levels. Does that mean I am not protected against COVID-19? And a resounding no, basically, is what she said. And one of the things she said was that circulating antibodies do not equal clinical immunity. So basically, the immunity you receive from the vaccine, it's beyond just antibody levels. There's also things called cellular immunity. So if you have gotten the COVID vaccine and you have done antibody testing and you don't see that, don't freak out. That doesn't mean that you're not immune from COVID-19. So that was really cool.
That's a great one. And let me ask, Deb, you have done that, right? You've had antibody tests. And
yes,
the first time you got them, you did freak out a little bit because you came back as nothing.
Right. I showed so it's part of the Johns Hopkins study that they're testing our antibodies throughout our journey of, you know, pre-vaccine, or post first vaccine, post second vaccine, and, you know, times after that. So yeah, my first one that came back, it was, there were no antibodies detected. And that literally freaked me out because I was thinking, you know, I've got this deletion in my immune system. And I was thinking, oh, is that tied to that? And well, you know, after the second antibody test, it came back with a lot of antibodies, but not on the higher level.
You said that last week, didn't you?
No, I just had one done. I haven't gotten that result yet.
Okay.
And
Okay.
that was
That's
after
a
the
third
booster.
one then that you just,
Yeah, that was after
fine.
the booster. So I'm still waiting to get those results. They haven't been emailed to me yet. But yeah, so after the second one, it did show up that I was producing antibodies, which actually I was thinking, phew, at least my working okay in that manner. So yeah,
But what you're saying, Stephanie, is don't freak out. Like if that situation would happen, that they're saying there's other ways that you're also
Right.
Your body takes care of it and covers. Yeah, I've heard that.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
Exactly.
And,
And that's even for, right? Because I feel like a lot of the media reports on this stuff and they're like, these vaccines are highly, highly effective. And what was cool about this was that these studies were done on rheumatology patients, right? So patients who are on immune modulating drugs, IMD. So that was really reassuring. And I love that. I'm glad she mentioned that. And I was like, oh, we got to share that because I've seen a lot of people like Deb who didn't get those antibodies as far as those studies, but yeah, so that was cool. Another like interesting thing that that they mentioned was that it's as far as treatment recommendations, if you still have not gotten the vaccine. So what she said was that TNF inhibitors do not affect seroconversion. And what we're talking about when we talk about seroconversion, we're talking about the development of antibodies in response to the vaccine. So what she's saying is that if you're taking TNF inhibitors, you don't need to stop them in order to get that vaccine. As far as other medications, Rituxan, they recommended that you schedule your vaccination 4 weeks prior to your next dose and then delay that next dose 2 to 3 weeks. But ultimately, these recommendations, it should be tailored to the individual. So if that's not possible for you, that's still okay. You should still just get the vaccine, and these vaccines are highly effective. So not to worry about that stuff. They also recommended too to stop Tylenol and NSAIDs if you can. If you're not able to because you have daily pain, she said don't worry about it. But that was another recommendation. Another thing that ACR recommended was that every rheumatology patient receive the booster. So now I've personally heard some things over social media about patients not knowing, does that include me? Am I immunocompromised? Because technically, yes, you are immunocompromised. Yes,
well,
you
are on medications. Got to clarify that because patients don't realize that if you have rheumatoid arthritis or you have psoriatic arthritis, you actually have an overactive immune system, and it's our treatments that strip our immune system. So
right, immune modulating drugs
as well. Yes.
But what's interesting that they said is they weren't talking about only patients who are on immune modulating drugs. Okay. They said all. So all rheumatology patients, regardless of the fact of you being on immune modulating drugs like Rituxan, the TNFs, Enbrel, all of these biologics, regardless of all of that, if you are a rheumatology patient, you should get a booster. That's the main message here. And as far as mismatched vaccines, that's been like a hot topic lately. Basically, yes. If you got the Johnson & Johnson, should you get the Pfizer booster? If you got the Pfizer booster, should you get the Pfizer shot? Should you get the Moderna booster? So ACR, what they said was, we don't know yet. They're still researching as far as mismatching. So, but still, if you don't have a choice, get the booster. That's the main message that they wanted to say about that. One thing that I thought was really interesting, and I'll just be really quick on this, and I thought it was funny because I feel like over social media, we've been talking a lot about this, and the question is, can vaccines lead to flares, like disease flare-ups? And I was like, I was like, me, because I got such a bad flare after my second one, personally. I mean, I don't know how you guys did.
No, I didn't.
Well, for me, I felt like a lot of joint pain or like more increased joint pain for 4 months. And my doctor found that, because I did the antibody test too, but my situation was a little different where I had antibodies and then gradually now it's lowered because I'm on methotrexate, but that's expected. If you're on methotrexate, studies have come out that showed eventually it will be lowered. But then my IgG level, the spike protein was not going down. For about a month or two, was still high. And then right when that went down, like a weight lifted off my shoulder and it was like all the pain and a little residual inflammation I had was gone. So it was just my body having more of a response, so I'm just curious as to like who had maybe a more worse response, because after the second vaccine, I did get that little rash. So everybody's body's different in how they respond, like if you have a really, strong T cell army, then another person with RA, your body's going to like rev up, so that's just what my doctor explained.
Yeah, I didn't have the first one, really not much more than fatigue and things like that. Second one, headache, fatigue, but probably better than the first one. And then third one, really not much of anything.
Interesting. How about you, Katie?
The first one was the worst, and then the rest weren't bad. Yeah. Some arm soreness, but I didn't notice. So long ago, the first one, but I didn't notice really anything else besides my arm being sore. So I lucked out.
That's interesting.
Cool. Yeah, you lucked out for sure. Well, as far as the research is concerned, they revealed that patients reported a range from 5 to 15%, with the majority of those flares reported as mild to moderate. So as far as patients out there, if you're watching and you haven't gotten vaccinated, you're worried about disease flare, usually pretty mild, moderate, manageable, but still go out and get that vaccine.
Yeah, it goes away. I'm fine now.
It goes away.
Yeah, it was just the second, after the second dose, it was worse for me, not the first.
Rheumatologists will across the board or really all agree that it's better to have a flare of disease which we all can have anyway. I mean, regardless, like we can have them for many reasons, but it's better than getting COVID. And especially in a time when the hospitals are very overcrowded, clinics are crowded, it's hard to get in, people in certain areas being turned away, and you don't want to be in a severe situation with your disease that you can't get immediate care because of the hot. So there's a whole thing there. There's one thing I do want to, a couple points I want to bring up here, and I do want to clarify one thing, and I don't know if we know the answer. So yes, all rheumatology patients should get the vaccination and should get the booster, but I think it's when it's available to them. And I just want to clarify that because we're in the United States. Some people, like in Australia, are still on one. So, they've just received one dose. So it depends on where you're tuning in from the world. And also that the booster is a actual third dose for us. And I've got the CDC up right now on my other screen, and it does say who is approved to get the third right now is immunocompromised people, and you are immunocompromised if you are on treatment. So just make sure that you're checking your local, your state, your country, or your government, because if you have, I don't know, so I need clarification. Like, I'm looking this up as right now, it doesn't say if you have like an autoimmune disease, it just says if you're in immunocompromised, which would require treatment. So I just want to put like a disclaimer we should check that. I love that you brought up that this was the ACR guidelines. The ACR guidelines, they update these every few months. That's where you should go. If you're a person living with these diseases, they are continuously outlining it in the guidelines. When you pull them up, it has all of the medications by line item that you have to worry about. And they all are different in how long you are asked to hold off or not hold off. And as Stephanie said, individualized. Talk to your rheumatologist. Shared decision-making, which you'll hear us talk about all the time, the process of communicating with your rheumatologist so that together you can make an informed decision based on your new unique characteristics is equally important now as it is in other treatment. for you. There are reasons why some people shouldn't be vaccinated. There could be some medical reasons. So make sure that you're at least having those conversations with your rheumatologist. But I really wanted to point out that just that the worldwide audience that we have here as well. And then I wanted to ask a question, because you may have said this, Stephanie, but I was writing and I don't know if I heard it wrong, so I'm asking for clarification. Because it's a question that I've heard in our community, and that question it has been, now there's in the United States, let me preface that as well, now they're talking about a 4th shot. So and I did talk to my rheumatologist, who is Dr. Dr. Kim, or just Al. Well, we'd like to introduce him, and he did say it's still just too early to know, who's going to be sent for that and who's not. So we're going to date this. We're in November of 2021, because things change so often. Who knows what will happen if you're watching this a month from now? But people are now. I've been hearing people in the community ask, "Well, can I have too many antibodies? Is it unsafe for me to get a 4th?" Did they cover that?
They did not cover that, but
Okay.
what they did talk about was the possibility of a 4th vaccine, a 4th booster, 4th shot, right? And they said it's still too early. We're not there yet,
Yep.
but they are looking at that being a potential for not even just rheumatology patients, everyone. That's what they're looking at right now.
Okay.
So that's the future. And I just wanted to point out too, all of these results that I'm talking about, this is not just for RA. As far as the disease flares, all of that, this is for rheumatology. I mean, RA, PSA, angst, lupus, all of that. So if you're tuning in and you have a different disease, like I said, relatively small risk of flares. So.
Awesome. I wanted to just cover a couple points. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the other session, which was about vaccination. There's a lot about vaccination hesitation, which makes sense, right? That's where we are right now. And I'm going to attempt to share my screen here on a couple images as well as I go along here. But essentially it was present. Remember, we are at the American College of Rheumatology. So all of these sessions that we're talking about, in the background, they're showing us research. They're showing us research that's been conducted, and the results basically drive the sessions. So that's where this information is coming from. And so they started by showing us research that was actually done at the end of December 2020 and the beginning of January 2021. And they did it purposefully before the vaccinations were available, to try to see how patients would respond to, will I get vaccinated or will I not? So this was done at Duke University, and it looks like they sent it out to 40, oh, there it is, 16,000, what am I saying? 16,000 people using my chart. So I think a lot of us are familiar with that. It's an online portal, again, depending on where you live in the world. But it's a portal that shares your records. So they emailed out. They did only get 433 responses, but even though that's small, it did teach them a lot. One of the things that they put in there that it's like, I wish they didn't have to, but especially here in the United States, they had to ask if you're Democrat or Republican, because there's a political issue. And I know that there are, the issue is worldwide as far as I should have a choice, I should not have a choice. It tends to be magnified in the United States because our country is based on freedoms. And so that plays in. So they did test that as well. But what came back, nothing surprising, nothing we don't know. The higher age of somebody, the more likely they were to get a vaccination. More people white than any other race. And one of the things that I did find interesting in this was they talked about. We saw this yesterday. There were still some people who said, I would get other vaccinations. I would get a flu shot, but I will not get a COVID shot. It's the second time I've heard that in this conference. But I'm going to see now. I'm going to see if I can share my screen here. So I'm going to let you all say anything you want to add to that while I am trying to pull up my screen.
That is so funny because I had a family member today actually that what did she say? She was like, I'm not gonna give I'm not gonna do a vaccine, but I also have never done the flu shot. And I was like, okay. Awkward. But I found that interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so this was specifically, they asked for people hesitancy if they had received the flu shot. And remember, time frame here, we're at the very beginning of 2021. And the majority of them were still very concerned that their specific rheumatic condition could be triggered with flare, which you just covered, Stephanie, with the disease. But again, here, this is no news to me, rushed or experimental. And so they didn't talk about this yesterday, but I think that does make sense. And some people, I brought up the political agenda because I think a lot of people are saying, well, maybe that's the primary reason why people, just will not budge. But I do think a lot of it also is with this rush. They thinking it's rushed, thinking it's experimental. But just as a note, these vaccinations are not new. These technologies were started a couple decades ago. And when the whole SARS epidemic originally had broken out, it was just, they've been waiting for an opportunity to use them. And I also was watching, I don't even know, it wasn't really a session at ACR, I don't think, as much as it was like a newscast, but they were saying that also you have to remember people were eager to enter clinical trials. It is so hard to recruit a clinical trial. Seriously. And what was happening in COVID is people were just flocking to be in these trials. So that's one reason why they were expedited as well. They had people. Usually it takes months and months to recruit people for a trial. And it was like there was like, boom, it's enrolled and here we go. So that's really important, I think, to keep up as well. And then I'm going to pull one more up here. There's another one. Okay. Can you see this one? Which of the following would make you more likely? Okay. Let's look at these. Do any of these resonate with any of you, or things that you've heard in the community? Which of the following would make you more likely to get or consider getting the COVID vaccine? This one was the highest. Evidence that it's safe. And it was very specific to the rheumatology community. Then it kind of goes down. You can't see the end; it's cut off. But it was 0 people said a religious leader or a political figure, which I guess is good news.
Yeah.
But do any of these resonate? Is something you've heard in the community that people are speaking of?
It's funny.
Oh,
Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's funny that is the number one, because, and I wish I would have gone to your session too, because then it would have made my session make more sense.
Oh.
But at the end of my session, in the conclusions, they had in big, bold, red, underlined letters, the vaccine is safe and effective. And I was like, okay, but wow, that's I'm wondering why it's so big and red. Obviously, now I know.
And remember, this was a survey that was right when they had started. So I do think it's interesting that some of these are still the same. That it hasn't fluctuated now that they've been out and data's come up. Katie, were you going to say anything? I saw your little box turn green. There might have just been a noise.
Oh, I think it was just kind of static.
Oh, okay, Effie.
But I was going to say,
go ahead.
A doctor rheumatologist telling me to do it definitely resonates with me personally. I'm just trying to think of what I've seen, out in the world. But maybe someone else can speak to that point.
I mean, I think like people in general are just wondering if it's safe, especially if they're living with a pre-existing condition, and they're hearing things like they're high risk COVID, which has been going around a lot. So I think what was interesting, what they said in this hesitancy slide is that doctors were finding that people were fearful, but when they were able to ask them in a non-judgmental way why they're not wanting to get the vaccine or they're hesitant or whatnot, then they can have a conversation with their patient and find that their concerns are valid. You know, they have real concerns. Not all of them are not, valid or not invalid or anything like that, but they were able to explain to them why they feel as a professional they should get the vaccine based on their situation. So I think it came down to talking to the person face to face, explaining and letting them talk too. And that's what also allowed me personally to feel a lot safer as well. I didn't really have an issue with the vaccine getting it personally, though, I did have my questions about it as well, because at my stage, I do have a moderate severe form of arthritis. So I didn't know how I was going to fare. Then another doctor kind of put into perspective in regards to the flares. And, you're going to flare if you get the vaccine, most likely, and you're going to flare even if you get COVID and you don't get the vaccine. So either way, we're going to flare. So that's another good perspective. And so it's just about how you communicate with your doctor, but how the doctor communicates with the patients and the people who are getting the vaccines too, because a lot of the doctors, they don't take the medications we take. They don't have the joint damage we have. So putting, themselves in our shoes, which my doctor, flat out told me, if I was in your shoes, I would do it. It just makes you more like comfortable,
That's
and also
exactly
know
the quote.
and also knowing
down.
Yeah, and also knowing like what my doctor went through. I literally asked her like, what were your symptoms? She told me, and I asked her which one should I get, because there was always so much info like Pfizer, Moderna's better. And, she gave me her opinion, and so I was able to just also ask questions. A lot of people don't though, but that's why the doctors need to have more compassion and empathy and like just more patience. And I think she gave a story about like one person like talking to like a teenager for like 20 minutes or a family for 20 minutes, and then they felt a little bit better.
Yeah.
So
I actually wrote that one down, that she said there's a doctor who was talking about that she thinks there's a little bit of mistrust in the
there's a less trust in doctors now.
And that has sort of emerged over the last decade, but now we're almost seeing, now people are needing that advice. So, we went from Dr. Google just 2 years ago with everybody coming in with their opinion to saying, oh my gosh, now I want your opinion, help me. And she gave that same example that there was somebody saying, I just don't know. I don't know that I want to get it. And then said, if it were me, and just really resonated. And so next time she saw the patient did get vaccinated. So the onus to the doctors who might be listening out there as well.
Yeah, and she did say for the mistrust in doctors. Sorry, she was saying like they don't know why it is. It's the way they're communicating to patients, and I think that's why doctors are starting to kind of realize maybe they need to kind of be on like a human level, not a scientific level when they're talking to their patients, so they can understand as well, the benefits of getting it.
I wanted to, go ahead, Deb.
I've got one more point. Going back to what Stephanie had mentioned about that session that you went to, in reading that whole, I went through the whole PowerPoint as well. And it was, again, their audience is supposed to be doctors. So that last frame that was in red was overall, basically it said that we as doctors and rheumatologists need to communicate to our communities that it is safe and it is effective to get. So that was what that overarching like last in red that you were saying, because that really was in red, and that's how it was presented. And I was going to say, in my area, the two factors I've been seeing from folks with the hesitancy is it's twofold. One is they don't want the government telling them to get the vaccine, and it's purely political, and that's their feelings. And then the other one is they just don't know enough. So it's like, okay. And then there's so much false information out there. So it depends on what reputable website you're going on to get your information or where you're going. So that's also a piece that I feel like can be misleading for so many people because they just don't know where to go to get reputable information.
Yeah.
And I also
Well,
think the information's changing so fast, and that's another fear
It's true.
factor. And everyone's like, well, everything changes every month, so I'm just going to wait because I don't know what they're going to say tomorrow, you know?
Mhm.
So
I've heard that.
That's
Yep.
true. I think that's important to highlight. True, but it's kind of like Tiff said. You know, CDC, ACR.
Yep.
These are
Oh, yeah.
reputable sources to look for information, and you know, you don't have to take our word for it. You can do it yourself.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's a great way of ending this segment here. And I want to stress the word segment. What we do with these debriefs is we try to cluster the same sessions together so that you have a choice. You could sit back, you know, chill out, have some popcorn, watch the whole thing, or we will chop these up into different segments so that you have, you know, you can watch the areas that are of interest to you. So we're going to actually move forward to precision medicine. We've got sort of 4 larger segments here. Well, no, actually 3 because the rest of them are smaller. So precision medicine, we went to a few of these today, and we talked a little bit about this yesterday, but just to bring everyone up to speed, and it really has become much more obvious to me today, even being in these sessions, there is such a difference between the terms precision medicine and personalized medicine. It is becoming so obvious to me now, just from being at this particular ACR. Personal, even though that you will see still that the terms are interchangeable. So I know that can be confusing. I mean, we're even the only arthritis organization on the Personalized Medicine Coalition, which is really a public policy organization. We've been on it for a couple of years because we've known that precision medicine was coming, but it's called personalized, and I want to say change the name. So anyway, personalized is more about each individual's choice of what type of medication might work for you. And it might not even be medication, just therapeutics in general. It could be exercise, diet. It's a personalized experience on what your best decisions are for your healthcare journey. But precision medicine is really about the science and getting down to molecules and cells and blood work and really targeting what's happening inside our immune systems and then manipulating that with therapies. And those therapies then are precise to individual people and subgroups of diseases. So that's where we're moving. And boy, are we moving there. Every session I think I've gone to, even ones that normally I would go, oh, wow, I think this is going to be teaching me just a little bit about our diseases. For example, went into one today called, I have it in front of me, looking at the wrong screen. I went and it was called, where is it at? It was, oh, here it is. Evolving Pathobiology and AxSpA and PSA, which is axial spondyloarthritis and psoriatic arthritis. And that even itself, it was an industry led by UCB. Holla, we love UCB. And they support many of our programs. And if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be able to do a lot of the programs that we do. So we got to holler out to them. But it specifically was talking about all of these new pipelines, all of these new targets that they're looking for to change the paradigm. One of the things that I thought was really interesting is they were talking about psoriatic arthritis in particular. A lot of the treatments that are out right now, you just can't get more than like 40% efficacy along the board. And I don't think that really is that unique to psoriatic arthritis. I think a lot of us see that 60-40 ratio where 60% of the population don't really respond to our diseases, or our diseases, the therapies, like that's why one person will try one and say it's great, and the other one's like didn't work, and why we need to go here. But and I'll cite a couple of the resources they put. But the point is that it was so pronounced, and we in the past have seen some research presented, and Deb and I in particular, she's been my partner in crime going these conferences for several years. And it hasn't said precision medicine, but we knew it was because it was talking about biomarkers. It was talking about different blood levels, different, like even when you think of one that's common that people know about, the RA factor, RA positive or RA, that's a biomarker. That's measuring a level of disease. And so we started seeing more research into those. So we recognized that as precision medicine. But now it not only is it in the title, but when you go to these, I don't even know how to say, Deb and Katie know. I mean, we went in there and skill level, conversation level up here. Every other word was something you would likely look up in a dictionary, and they were all doctors having conversations about these topics and brainstorming together, which I thought was fascinating to be able to like be a fly on that wall, right? But I have to admit, I'm a fast typer. So I usually am sitting there and I'll capture a lot and Deb's taking pictures. And I realized after the first 5 minutes in each one of them, that wasn't possible. There was no way that I was going to, because I'd have to look up what every word meant. But what I was able to do is sit back, listen, and capture the themes, capture the main points of what they're trying to say, what they're discussing, and what it relates to us as people living with the diseases, and what we should know is happening. So that's what I've done for you. So I will actually write this out and make it more available in an educational takeaway form for everybody. So I don't want to spend 15 minutes doing a lecture on it, but I will be happy to do a separate one if people think that it would be helpful. But essentially, I'm gonna pull up my document here, and that's why I'm looking over here. One of the things there's a lot of talk in lupus, so I should say that too. We have seen in the past several of the studies in rheumatoid arthritis, and that is often because of things like the rheumatoid or the RA factor. That's a known that it's easier to study. It was there. It's something that they could see. If you have positive, the disease activity is more aggressive. Those type of things. So that's where it sort of started, and now we see a lot of this study in lupus, and my guess is because lupus is extremely complex and involves more organs usually. So they're trying to figure out, and these things that I went to today was, okay, we have all of these different cells, we have all of this molecular structure that's happening in our bodies, and we know what our immune system is capable of. Our immune system is filled with all of these proteins, okay? And so let's say, like, use the alphabets. You've got letter A, you've got letter B, you've got letter C. So all of these are like labeled onto one of these proteins. And the proteins live in different sides of our immune system. So we have the innate immune system, and that's what we're born with. So the innate system will fight off viruses, bacteria, fungus, stuff like that. And then the adapted side is like a learned response. And so autoimmune is typically categorized as that side of the system. It's adapted. There's an environmental trigger that has triggered a response, and your body is reacting to something. So it's not a natural, necessarily innate response. And so what they're finding, and Deb, this is going to stand out to you because I think it was your 2018, and the first time it was a lupus session, and they started saying, we think that the innate and the adaptive side are connected. And we went, what? Because we always heard lupus as autoimmune, adaptive, and autoinflammatory diseases like Still's disease, for example, innate. But doesn't it make sense that our immune system, it's in our body, right? Doesn't it make sense? They kind of cross wires here and there. So so that's the gist of a lot of the conversation. But what was important to note is they were brainstorming. So while there are some studies in progress now that are targeting these different proteins, different than they're targeting now. Like we hear TNF inhibitor, we've heard or IL-23, or those are different mechanisms that they're blocking. It's the same philosophy, but now what they're doing is they're saying, if I add something to this protein to activate it, we know in this subgroup, they respond differently than in this subgroup. So it's at that, like they're seeing, there's light bulbs happening. But you hear the doctors and they're saying, well, if we test, we could pull this, we could inhibit this certain protein, and we're seeing a response in some systemic lupus patients, they're not having worse disease. So it's these sort of aha moments that I'm going to call them. And they were saying that they feel it's their onus, essentially, to test these out. So at the same time, I'm going into industry or pharmaceutical company sessions, and you can see the different proteins, the different things that they're testing. So it's all happening from different areas, and that's why we, as a very important stakeholder group, also need to understand what's happening so that we can start to plan and think about, okay, number one, how would we like to have these treatments that are precision but personalized, I guess, to our unique needs. But there are going to be times in the near future that there's going to be calls to participate in clinical trials. It's the only way to get these drugs to market. So those are conversations you'll want to have with your doctor. There would be different benefits than the clinical trials now, because the clinical trials now only recruit a generalized patient population, very generalized. You usually have to have certain levels of inflammation. You usually can't have comorbidities. Oh, gee, I wonder why only 40% of people respond, right?
Yeah,
So
it's funny you say that, because I've seen clinical trials where they're recruiting RA patients, and if you've been on a biologic before, you're out.
Yeah.
they want biologic naive.
Right. Or methotrexate.
Exactly.
Too. Yep.
Or
Yes.
methotrexate too. So
but that's what they consider, like that's their general population. How realistic is that? How many of us have not been on a biologic? How many of us are biologic naive? You know, so that's why these precision medicine trials are going to be so very important. So and by the way, our organization does have a project preparing patients for precision medicine clinical trials, which is why I know a lot about this as well. And we are going to have more lessons on that coming up. But one of the sessions also that I just want to, now that you've got sort of a summary of where the research is, and it's early enough, but still, also as a side note, precision medicine trials theoretically should not take as long as the other clinical trials that we know today. So if you kind of think of this, COVID trials, they went real fast. There's an opportunity here to get treatments to patients faster. So there's less people that would be in these trials, even though they do need to recruit a large enough for it to matter, which we referenced yesterday. You need to have it analyzed so it is statistically significant. Okay. The one that I want to also, that was wow. I started taking notes and said, never mind, that I sat back and listened. And then what I did is I went to I have an immunology textbook that I won from UR. Yeah. And went in there and I went on some sites and I did my research, I did my homework. So while I was eating lunch, that's what I was doing, because I wanted to make more sense of this session so I could report back. And it was called New Strategies to Target Complement Pathways. And that's complement, not, you look nice today, but complement with an E, not an I. And what this talked about, and again, I'm going to create a full education takeaway from this. So I'm going to be very brief on it. But essentially what it was talking about is our bodies, our immune system has a complement system. And it's essentially, and the number they used today was over 30 proteins, although I have seen it cited at the NIH and when I did my homework today differently, but I'm going to use what was in the session today. Over 30 proteins, and they work within your body to protect the pathogens. And what pathogens are essentially, they help to fight bacteria, virus, fungus, which I was talking about earlier. So your complement system has all of these proteins, and they're working. It used to be thought it was just that innate system, but recent research has shown, surprise, surprise, and this was focusing on lupus a lot, that it also has something to do with the adaptive. So when I looked up research from 2012, I was seeing it only listed as innate. And then I did see more recent 2018, 2019 saying, aha, it also is the adaptive. That's important for us as patients to know too, because if you're hearing, oh, I have an immune disease, it's really all environmental. It's all because of this. There are other things in our bodies working, okay, along with this. And what the complement, it has 3 different pathways. Don't need to know what they're called, doesn't matter. Just know that there's 3 different pathways, and each of those pathways have different of those proteins that fall in them. So one of them has a lot of the letter C, okay, and then there's been a lot of focus on C5 in particular. So there's a lot of testing on if I block C5, look what happens. A lot of these lupus patients are not having as much disease activity. Why? So we're still in sort of that why phase. But this complement system, it needs to be activated to it doesn't. So don't think, oh, this is, it's going to go haywire. Although they are concerned when they're testing these, they want to make sure that doesn't happen. You don't have an immune response where you are triggered unnecessarily, because your body isn't triggering that system unless there's a reason, unless there's something happening, a virus, a medication, something's causing it to. As far as targeting the treatments, we have, looking at this here, the complement to activate it, they're saying that they're looking at these different pathways. Do we block C3? Do we block C5? What will happen? Do we block the receptors of these proteins? So this was the conversation they were having, excuse me. And I'm going to share my screen here. Let me pull this up. So I want to show you the treatment. So let me share my screen. Share. Oh, I have the other one. Oh, I have too many up. See, that's what happens when you don't practice. Okay, so these are all of the different drugs, treatments, pharmaceutical products that are in clinical development targeting these different pathways in this complement portion of our immune system. So you can see that there's a lot, and these are the different, if you look over here in the bottom left, these are the different mechanisms of action. These are the different ways. So you see biologic, we are all a lot familiar with your traditional biologics, small molecule. So that's going to be like a DMARD, a methotrexate, a pill form, a JAK inhibitor. So that's what the manufactured small molecule means. And then you just see all of these other targets, the antibody, the peptide. And they also said a lot of what's happening with COVID and what they've learned with COVID is starting to be translated into these treatments, because they're seeing a lot of these parts of our immune system that have been activated. So COVID has, in a weird way, opened the door to looking at responses that could happen in our specific treatment plans. So I'm gonna stop for a minute, because I've said a lot of information, and ask if you all that are watching have any questions.
I feel like I'm in my biochemistry class all over again
Right.
from 19 years ago.
Is it like bad?
No. But what I actually, going back to that one picture, can you go back again? Sorry. Yeah, looking at the bottom part again, look at all the different things that they're looking at. Subcutaneous, so those are like injections. Intravenous, so those are the infusion versions. There's topical. I mean, some of these in
topical, you have to. They also were talking organs, and does include skin.
Yes.
So they were talking about the different also with precision medicine and working specifically on these different proteins of targeting, which ones greatly affect the skin, which ones affect brain fog, which ones affect, you know, the different organs in your body, which ones affect the joints. So that in itself is fascinating.
Yeah, this is fascinating.
Yeah, this is a really cool infographic. I really like it.
Yeah, that's why, because again, there was a lot of whoa, but I thought that this one is one that as patients we could relate to and understand. And then the other one was this one. And so they did talk about future approaches, again, expanding the targets and indications, new modes of action, delivering different things that will inhibit these proteins in our body, and with the goal to minimize systemic
Issues, yeah.
disease. But if you look here, this is what they're taught so when we're saying the primary drivers of disease, so things that are targeting the eye inflammation, the heart, the kidney, the joints. So this whole body sort of targets. It was really fascinating. So I just wanted patients to know that this is happening. This is going to be the future of our treatments. And I personally, as somebody living with our diseases, are hugely excited about it.
Absolutely.
And I'm glad there's a silver lining for COVID. Like,
yeah,
it
and
leads to more research.
It's being able to, what did it say? And now this might be kind of wordy, being able to use mRNA technology either for immune stimulation, stimulating your immune system, or immune tolerization, having your immune system tolerate something, could reopen the efforts in this specific type of immunotherapy. And that was in referring to the work that they're doing with COVID. So it's just fascinating. Yeah, and what we know that the rheumatology community has been just in a highlight since COVID, because COVID, it replicates our diseases so much in what it does. So again, I will do more on this, but this is what I was able to come up with in an hour. of just trying to come up with an easy way to explain this. But I just think it's not something that patients shouldn't know about just because it's really advanced verbiage, and it's very 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 scientific. I think we need to have it broken down so that we know what the future holds for us as well. And then I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie and Effie and Deb. You all went to disparities. That's the third main section we wanted to talk about. The rest is more of some mentions.
Yeah, I was going to kick it off with two slides that again were so powerful. One was a quote from one of the presenters' patients, and the quote was, "I only see female doctors or women of color as they are the only ones that see me as a human." That's like powerful in itself. And the second one is was explaining what is health disparity. And this is a CDC definition, which is preventable differences in the burden of disease, injury, violence, or in opportunities to achieve optimal health experienced by socially disadvantaged racial, ethnic, and other population groups and communities. So that is kind of the essence of what health disparity is. And I was looking at the PowerPoint, but I know that Steph and Effie went to the the program or the session. So take it away, ladies.
Absolutely. I thought it was a great session. I remember Effie got noticed. So that was really cool too. Oh, you're on mute, Effie.
It was just a nice welcome. It wasn't anything special, but it was nice to be seen, I guess. So,
yeah. Absolutely. I think it's great to be seen. I think, that's one of the cool things about being a part of this, they know that we're gonna be there to represent patients, and then we get to disseminate all this information to you guys. But yeah, one of the cool things about this session was they said that racial disparities look at the impact of racism on patient experience. And I thought that was such a good way to talk about it. They showed a few interesting graphics, and one of them was, I don't know if you've seen I'm sure most people have seen the book, The Giving Tree, and it's a great book. And they have sort of to explain the differences between inequality and equity and justice, right? What they look at is they have this tree, and the giving tree kind of is leaning to the side, and it's got a bunch of apples on one side. And inequality is two people on either side of the tree, both trying to pick apples. Equality is two people on both sides of the trees, each on either side of the tree, both on ladders. That's equality, right? Equity would be one person on this side of the leaning tree receiving a smaller ladder, and the other person on this side receiving a larger ladder to reach these apples. And then finally, justice is straightening out that giving tree with apples on either side of the leaves of that tree, and both have ladders that enable these two individuals to reach those apples. And so I thought that was such a cool way to explain the importance of justice and equity when it comes to these health inequality and all that stuff. And one of the cool things that they shared, well, not cool, but kind of sad but interesting, and I'm glad they captured it, was that hurried communication, as far as doctors being quick in their appointments when they're talking to patients, that is associated with damage accrual in lupus. And I was like, oh my goodness, wow. Another thing they talked about was that people who belong to these marginalized groups, we're talking racial and ethnic minorities, they tend to wait, and these are results from actual studies, they wait over 1 year to diagnosis. And one of the things that Effie was pointing out, because she said, what did you say, Effie? You're like, they brought up patient advocates.
Oh, I don't know. I don't remember the exact quote. But she just said the importance of like patients and their care, I guess. Leads to better diagnosis or faster diagnosis or something like that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like I actually had to like go rewind and like go and look back. And one of the things, because we were both like writing notes so crazily that we weren't able to catch it until I was able to like go back. It was that patient advocates should know about these delays in care, that they should know about that. The other thing was that late diagnosis is associated with moderate to severe flares and increase in morbidity and mortality. And it just goes to show you that this stuff matters. It matters to us. It matters. I mean, clearly it matters to rheumatologists, ACR. It was fun to see how people in the comment box of the rheumatologists were commenting. They're like, oh my goodness, that's amazing. I didn't know that, just very involved in that presentation. It was a really good presentation.
And I just want to say, sorry, for this presentation, it was for lupus and RA, but it was more heavily focused on lupus because they were saying minorities are impacted by lupus more than rheumatoid arthritis. And they were mentioning something about insurances and how lack of insurance, or usually minorities may be underemployed. That also plays a role in the treatment, in getting a diagnosis fast enough, because they don't have the resources and the tools to even go to a doctor. And that's what leads to the late diagnosis and all those complications too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And they were talking about too, that they were saying, we need to think about these disparities differently. Was one of the things they said, and just the impact of racism on that, like Deb said, the opportunity to receive optimal health. And kind of they were talking about these social determinants of health, the food security, transportation, location, like those things matter, right? Like it matters if you live 30 minutes, an hour away from your doctor than if you were to live around the corner from their office. You know, those type of things matter when it comes to health. And the kind of, for me, the big kind of take home message there was that non-medical factors account for 80 to 90% of health. I was like, what?
Yeah, that was a little boggling.
I was going to bring up, Tiffany, that was a theme that we had. Now, was that last year or the year before?
I'm going to tell you what, but can you hear that noise?
No.
I don't know if my husband's drilling or if he's blending a shake, but that'd be a pretty blended shake because it's been going on for like 2 minutes. Okay, so sorry about that. If you can hear.
No, I can't hear anything.
Drilling down there. What I know what you're. It wasn't at a conference. It was in episode 1 of Roomy Rounds in our AiArthritis Voices 360 talk show when Al, Dr. Kim, came on. That is, so you know, that is a breakout series that we created where rheumatologists and patients come to the table as equals, and we have kind of the heart-to-heart hard conversation, so it's not a Q&A thing. And the first episode was on the doctor visit, and he had a researcher that he brought, and there was a breakout episode 2, where we talked more to Jarek, and they were doing research at Washington University on the social determinants. So that's where that's the research, but it wasn't at one of the conferences, even though at ACR last year there was they did talk a lot about social determinants. It's not something we hear at ULAR, interestingly enough, but it is very specific to the United States.
And I think one last thing, Stephanie, correct me if I'm wrong, but they were talking about the studies and how there's not that many minorities in the studies. And there's a certain subgroup of people like Europeans and like who are more focused in the studies that they have going on. And so that's another factor as to why they haven't, have a lot of knowledge or like improvement or movement forward for people in the minority sector. I don't know if that's,
I know that
that's huge.
That is a huge one.
Any study, I mean, typically is white, like middle-aged woman that is answering the studies. And it's a huge problem that even the researchers, when they're looking for folks, they're trying to expand into other groups and they're underrepresented, and they're looking and they're like, does anybody know, that kind of stuff. But, that is clearly what the, determinants are allowed.
It's a huge problem. It's a huge problem not having these diverse samples when it comes to research studies. Huge problem. And I think it's something that I hope, we help to tackle that and hope.
For sure. It's going to take I think it's going to take a lot of patient peer conversations because it's just not, there's just not enough. We need to get out in the communities. We need to talk to all different people and explain the value of being counted and what that means, not only for your own personal disease management journey, but literally so you could change the whole way that people are treated. I mean, it's, think about if you're having trouble wrapping your brain around it. Most of us with the whole COVID thing have heard in the rheumatic disease community have heard, well, we weren't in the clinical trials as a whole community. And that was one of the reasons why a lot of people are scared of the vaccine, because they're like, well, it wasn't tested in my disease. Well, it's the same thing. If you are a Black person, if you are a Latino, Hispanic, if you're not in that trial, then it's important to understand if something would react differently. We're sitting here talking about precision medicine. How much more precise can you be? So I just think that us as people in the community living with the diseases, it's really something that we all should think about helping with, because we've got to get to more people. Anything else? Were
I
there any
think
other points to that?
I think that's a great point that you make, especially when it comes to this precision medicine, right? As a person like living with rheumatoid arthritis, to me, the hope of precision medicine is great. And it's so hopeful and it's so encouraging and it's exciting and all this stuff. But like also as a Hispanic woman, I'm like, wait a second, a lot of these studies weren't done on my people.
Yep.
You know, and so it's important for all of us to do what we can and look within ourselves and like you said, see what we can do to contribute to the science and the knowledge to improve our lives as a whole collectively.
Absolutely. Anything else that anyone wanted to add from those sessions? Okay.
That was really good. I like that.
I do want to just, one of the things that my pen just ran out of ink. One of the things that that's all right, I got 100 more. One of the things that our organization does as well, and that one doesn't work. Wow, I must write a lot of these pens. Number 3, here we come. Let's try this one. One of the things, woohoo, we have a winner. One of the things that as an organization, as I said, our mission statement is to help all patients have a voice. And what that also means is we present patients with opportunities, just like this Go With Us program. And one of the opportunities that I'll mention here at the end of this particular segment is that I sit on Bristol Myers Squibb, BMS, their health equity in rheumatoid arthritis specific panel, advisory panel, which you might say, well, you're a middle-aged white woman, that's weird. But it's because of our organization, it's not me. And what our organization does is we facilitate the ability for all people to have a voice. That's what we do. So by me sitting there, I am trying to reach out and get all voices from all of the different people out there. So that's why. So just as an FYI, that is something that I was just asked to it's coming back. It started, they had a little break and now they're bringing it back. So we will make sure that you all know what those opportunities are if you have rheumatoid arthritis and you have something to say in disparities in health equity. Let us know, because your voice, we will make sure that it's heard at that panel. So there you go. That's really wrapping up all of the big things. We had a couple other small ones. Does everyone have time to stay on? This has been long. I just want to make sure.
Yeah,
I'm good.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to really just a short mention of advocacy, which is public policy, and I will gladly answer any more questions in detail about these issues, but the reason we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on it is because we are international and this is a US based conference. So the public policy was about the United States policies. So it wouldn't be relevant to a large percentage of our audience. But what I did just want to mention, they talked a lot. It was focused strongly on what the American College of Rheumatology themselves, which is basically the rheumatologists who are doctors. I thought this was just interesting to know what our doctors are advocating for. And I think that it's the same idea no matter where in the world that you live. So one of the things that they talked a lot about was access to medications, and something that is relevant internationally. There was an issue when our presidency, when the new president took over, there was something called the most favored nations. That was a policy put forth by the president before us, and it was very alarming and scary for a lot of people because it was based on what's called international pricing index. So wanting to take the prices of drugs in different countries and then compare that and then try to push for basically that to happen in the United States. And there's a lot of reasons why I think we can all visualize why worldwide pricing it can be problematic. There's a lot more that goes into that, but what has been solved by having a new administration in. So they did talk about that. And I just thought that I wanted to just throw that on the table. That's also what we do here. We like to throw topics on the table. The first time we throw it on the table, then it's open forever. we can continue. That's just how we kind of roll. Is in step one, we listen, then we throw it on the table, then whatever. We can have a million conversations afterwards. And so, I just think that that's a conversation for access, no matter where in the world that you live. What are your barriers? And rheumatologists are fighting, and I believe that that's the same regardless if they're part of the ACR or other places, fighting for you to have your treatment, and the decision to be made between the doctor and the patient. And in the United States, there are things called PBMs, or pharmacy benefit managers. There's different obstacles no matter where you live, but that's a big problem here for us, and transparency and drug pricing. They do negotiations behind the scenes, and nobody knows what it is where that savings is going. It's not going to us. So that's just an issue that's specific to here. But again, I'm trying to translate that to what's happening in the rest of the world as well. I think we're all fighting for that access to the treatments, and having it at the right time when you need it, and based on your doctor's decision with you. So there was a lot of updates that they gave. Again, it's too specific to the United States, so I'm not going to mention it here, but we will put it on social media, and I'll put it in a report that you can download from this briefing. But they also did, and we're going to talk about this at a different briefing, they did talk a little bit about the shortage of Actemra, and which Deb, oh, hold on, I need to put
A puppy issue, I think.
Yes.
Well, I was, again, if I was looking down, I was texting my husband to give my cat treats because she's at the door and she's my old lady. So I was like, please give such and such treats because she's meowing at the door.
No, it wasn't
heard
a
a meow.
puppy issue. It was a cussing husband issue.
Oh, it sounded like barking. Okay.
No,
Okay.
there was very loud cussing going on. Must have been something to do with the drill that I heard.
Could be.
But anyway,
funny.
I was just, they did talk about that they're working and they're fighting to make sure that our patients have access to our treatments. And just, again, we will go into this in a different debrief, but we did do a press release on this. Deb was part of it because she has been forced off of her Actemra infusions, like many around the world have, to accommodate the hospitalizations in COVID. So we'll leave that at that, but know that that is an issue, and I know that is not specific to the United States. But that's my advocacy report. And then there were several little other sessions that people went out to. So first, before they mentioned theirs, we want to give a shout out to all of the patients that we've run across in these sessions. And some of them did have the opportunity to present their own abstract posters, which is called patient perspectives. And they are things that they have done as people living with the diseases, like support groups or cooking courses, just things that improve their own journeys. So we want to give our hats off to them, and just mention we're glad that there are patients present. We do certainly hope that we can improve the exposure in the way that patients are participating in conferences in the future. Oh, and I forgot on the Disparities one, I did want to give a shout out. Our friend Rick Phillips was presenting in something that is along the lines of the disparities with ageism. So while we did not attend that session, we can go back and watch it. And we hope that Rick will give us a link to any type of write-up that he does on that, and we will certainly link it to this as well. So I'm going to pass it over to, looks like that. Oh, Deb's famous foot is next.
I'm going to try to share my screen, but if it doesn't, I might ask you, Tiff, if you can make me a co-host. I'm
Okay.
gonna.
Oh yeah, I can.
Oh, actually, it looks like it's letting me. So never mind.
Oh,
Here we go. Let's see that. Oh, here we go.
That has a very famous foot now.
It is. So, it was. Can you guys see my screen?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Okay, so this is my foot surgeon. I think through, you know, lots of the podcasts that we've been doing and some of our things that we've done, I've talked about my feet quite a bit in the last 2 years, because in the past 2 years, I've had reconstructive foot surgery on both feet. So I found my my foot surgeon, Katie Williams. Katie is awesome. Again, she even gave me a shout out. So I am actually one of the feet in her presentation. And it was really funny because, again, she classifies me as JRA, again, being diagnosed very young, but these are all the things that she was talking to me, and she gave me a shout out by saying, this is somebody who's near and dear to my heart. Again, yeah, after the first surgery, my husband was there. The second surgery, COVID, husband wasn't allowed there. So different situations, but so that is the famous but I was going to show you guys, that is the pre-foot that she was showing. And there's actually I have a photo of it facing on, and everything's overlapped, and I have so many pressure sores underneath and things like that. So that is that. And this is what it looked like, very similar to what she did show. This is what she did, and that is all the hardware that was in my toes. The 4 toes, those are removable pins, but that is done in office and without anything. They just literally take the white tops off and yank them out.
And I've been through that. I've been through that. I remember that.
So these are the post feet. These are my feet now, as far as what they look like after both surgeries. And I am walking and everything is fabulous. So yeah, it was really cool being given the shout out and actually seeing that. And she does foot and ankle. And she also was giving shout outs to my rheumatologist, who's, you know, a partner with her. So my rheumatologist is also at ACR and has been presenting several things. And she actually also gave a voice to our Actemra shortage, but it's the press release. Yeah, she actually was quoted and did a lot of, she's helped us with that, just getting a rheumatologist to speak to that as well. But yeah, that's my, I texted my husband and I said, and I showed him the picture and he's like, wow, you're famous. I said, well, my feet are, and that shows how abnormal they were for them to show up at an ACR presentation.
Well, she did a great job.
Awesome.
Total transformation. I mean,
I can't tell you.
Props to you too, Deb. I mean, you're a warrior to go through that stuff. Yeah, we all are. I mean,
and I think about
amazing.
all of these conferences that we've been at, and I've offered a scooter. We do pay for, you know, the persons living with the diseases who go with us if they need scooters, and she's just like, nope, I'm
got
good.
it. Well, and that's what
I look at those and think,
Katie kept saying, I don't know how you're walking on those feet. And she goes, there's so many pressure fractures that you've had over the years that are throughout the bones. And she's like, I don't know how you're walking on those feet. You just get used to a certain level of discomfort and you just press on. And I've always done that. And now I can actually, I'm not running. Because like if this was my foot, they took out all of these joints in both feet. So cartilage fills in the space. So I've got some flexibility now. It's interesting how that, because I was like, you're taking them out and you're not doing anything. So again, it's been interesting. So I'm doing really well and walking really easily. And my feet are fabulous.
And hopefully less pain.
Famous. And Stephanie, did you say you have this done as well?
Not on my feet, but I've had pins. I've had surgeries where they put pin in the joint, and all I remember, I was 10 years old, and the guy squeezed real tight and just yanked with a wrench type thing. And I was like,
it is like a wrench. They use tools like that. They have to pop off the white top, which is like a cushion barrier, and then they just pull. And when
you don't have time to scream.
No, when there's four of them.
Yeah.
What did you ask, Tiff?
Does it hurt really, really bad?
So it's not that it hurts really bad. It's inside your foot and you feel pressure, and
it's different and weird.
It is. And it actually messes with my head. So I almost passed out the first time when I actually had somebody with me, and I asked for Valium the second time, and they gave me Valium so I could have that during that. And I was much better.
Yeah, you were.
And it's lightning fast. I mean, it's lightning fast. It's like, no,
it wasn't. No. I mean, it's twisting to get the sucker out because they're this long. They're this long.
Oh gosh, yours was worse than mine.
Oh
yeah, mine was like, like,
I wish it was that fast. I wish it was that fast. But each one just took a bit. But anyways, I highly recommend it. I'm not
presented at the ACR. What can I say? Deb is tough. Deb is tough as nails. Or tough as pins. Should we say tough as pins?
Toughest
I'm
pins.
not sure.
I like that. Tough as pins.
I love it.
All right. Okay. Well, Effie and Steph, you want to meet the expert on reproductive health.
Effie, do you want to take this one or?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't take too many notes. I tuned in for a little bit, but I think they were just saying also, it's individual with the medication that women want to take when they're pregnant. And they said something interesting about how the doctors don't have to prescribe a medication if they don't want to, which I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but it was just interesting how they said like the doctor has a choice too. And yeah, so they were just saying there's a lot of, medications out there that you can take when you're pregnant if you decide with your doctor that's the path for you, so it is personalized, it is precision medicine yet again that they were kind of referring to in regards to pregnancy. And I think they had touched on like flares and, women talking about if, their concerns about flaring during pregnancy or before and after, what happens during those phases, and how it's not your fault if you flare, because a lot of people think they may do something wrong, and it's just how your body may react, so that's just the main takeaways I got from that session. I don't know if Stephanie has anything else to add, but
yeah, I think that was basically it, about this whole precision medicine, this whole individualized approach and consideration for like disease activity, with each individual person. And one thing I thought was cool was that they showed that the data says that TNF inhibitors are safer than the other ones, basically, is just a generalized statement. And it was funny because during my pregnancy, I didn't go on a TNF inhibitor, but while I was breastfeeding, they put me on a TNF inhibitor so that hopefully I could get a little bit of protection while I was nursing my son. So that I thought was cool. But they didn't say that one specific TNF inhibitor is more than the other one. So they said if a patient is on a TNF inhibitor, just stick with that one and don't try to go to another one just because that one's
okay.
Yeah.
And
so that one.
Eons ago when I was pregnant, because I've got a 22-year-old, the recommendations were really different back then. I had to be off of everything. And what I was left on was steroids and higher doses of steroids because they wanted everything. Because at that point, there wasn't enough data on any of that stuff. So they wanted me off everything except my steroids, which went up. And they always, sometimes you hear that people with rheumatic diseases can go into a remission during your pregnancy. Yeah, no, that didn't happen here. And we always wanted to have 2 kids, and when I nursed Jacob too, And he actually ended up having to have a neonatologist at the birth and just make sure his adrenals were functioning, because that's one issue with steroids. And everything was perfect with him, but you know, it's a different world. Tiffany, we should link again, Mama's Facing Forward. Is that what it is?
I'm pulling it up right now.
Yes.
Perfect, because
It's
Mariah,
exactly what I'm doing. So I was like, oh, I got to remember what the research one was too. But I actually did a Google search, and we came up on the first page for our episode. So that was kind of easy.
Oh yeah,
So
I love Mariah. She's got a
yes,
she's got a great set
Mama's
there.
Facing Forward, and then
She's also a great resource for a woman who was on medications, right?
exactly,
She
and
pushed
like
for
which ones, which ones. She's got all the research. So I
and
mean,
I'm glad Debbie brought up the corticosteroids, because I think they had touched on that, but I didn't catch exactly what they were saying in regards to that for treatment. But I don't know if they were for it right now or not, but I don't remember.
I remember they were saying that TNF inhibitors better than glucocorticosteroids and all that stuff. But yeah, they were really open, honestly. And I think they were, and not just for RA, for stills, for lupus, for all of these conditions. And one of the cool things they said at the end was that care should be focused on disease activity, which is different from what they used to be focused on, like Deb said during her pregnancy and birth, where they were focused on the infant. They're saying, so the focus now should be on managing the mother's disease activity to improve the pregnancy and the pregnancy outcomes.
I will say, after having Jacob, I mean, I was miserable. I'd have to put him on the floor to get any like onesies on him or change him or anything, because I couldn't like stand him on like this level and pull his shirt off of him. I couldn't get my shoulders up. So
that was me.
And then after, my rheumatologist finally told us, you need to stop trying for the second one because you're not healthy enough to get pregnant. So that was when we kind of closed the door on number 2, but which was okay. Again, everything has a purpose. And I always say that he's my greatest gift, but my greatest challenge too.
Yeah. Isn't that the truth? I had a really bad postpartum flare up too. And I'm with you, Deb, on that one. I'm still trying to figure out what treatment works for you. To be honest, number 2 is
I know. I get it.
But it's cool to hear that that these docs are interested in trying to help. And one of the cool things I remember she said at the end, she said one of the best moments in her career, right? I think it was Effie that she said that one of the best moments in her career was when she had a patient that really wanted to have a child for a long time. And she remembers like that first visit when she brought in her infant, and she was like, oh, that was a wonderful feeling, is what she said. She said it was a wonderful feeling, highlight of her career. So I was like, oh, got all the feels.
So I just wanted to just back bullet a couple things. That is interesting that they were saying about the TNF-I inhibitors. I need to go back and look into research too. I know that Cimzia was the first that was approved for use in pregnancy. So I'm not sure which ones have been gone through the trial.
Cimzia is,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say Cimzia is the one I did postpartum. So what their whole thing was, so what their whole thing was about the whole Cimzia versus other TNFs was that they were worried that, and this happens, is if a patient's on a specific TNF and they move to TNF number 2, let's say Cimzia, right? And then you try to go back to TNF 1, sometimes one will stop working, right? So that is why they recommended you just keep the patient on the first TNF inhibitor. If they're already on a TNF inhibitor, just leave it alone, because then you can have problems later on, or that second one might not work as well as the first one. So even though there are a lot of, I was going to say, which is, so even though there are a lot of different TNFs, sometimes patients respond to one and not the other. same with JAK inhibitors. There's a few on the market, but people respond differently.
Well, it's exactly the point of the whole Actemra argument is
Yeah.
it's not just the answer isn't just put somebody on another drug in the same class. It's like, it just contradicts
Right.
the whole argument. Like, it just makes no sense to me, where you can have the research and the data in one topic that we're talking about and then completely go against that.
Exactly.
And what's happening in the world. Sorry, I'm gonna get all ranty again. So I just wanted to make sure, if you wanted it, we mentioned Mariah Leach. She is a person with rheumatoid arthritis. You can find her Mama's Facing Forward on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And then I also wanted to point out, we did a few talk show episodes with Mariah, and then also Cheryl Crow, Shoutout, who's a person living with our diseases who's tending this, and she did a talk show with Mariah, one of our talk shows, and our patient co-host Danielle, and then they talked also about mother to baby, and we met people from there, Deb, in 2019 or 18. And if you want to learn more about participating in research or looking at the research that's been done in pregnancy, the website is mothertobaby.org. Highly recommend that. And they have all of their studies and all that have done, and all of their current things of enrollment. So I just wanted to mention that as well. Okay.
Yeah, they're great. They are great. I looked at them before my pregnancy, during my pregnancy, after. So they have all the data, even on breastfeeding too. So if you're postpartum,
and one of our episodes was on breastfeeding.
Yeah. Oh, perfect.
So that makes sense why that was on there. Yes, I totally agree. And then, okay, last but not least, Miss Katie went to a study group.
I was going to say, that is almost a perfect segue, because this study group that I attended, one of the presenters was Cheryl Crow, a talk show, co-host.
Oh, there you go.
And it was a study group on promoting an interdisciplinary approach to supporting persons with inflammatory arthritis at work. And it, again, super early in the morning, so I didn't quite catch the first part because I missed my alarm. But the conversation that I did hear was fantastic. I'll just kind of hit some of the highlights and wrap it up pretty quick. But they were talking about adherence problems. And the one quote was, I tell my patients that, a pill or medication, it's a date, it's not a marriage. So it's not like you're committing long-term. Because they were talking about a lot of people were hesitant to be on any kind of medication, anything unnatural. And then I think it was Cheryl who said that, my body is already doing something unnatural. So I want everything I can to every tool in my toolbox to, help me be healthy.
I love that.
That's a great quote.
Yeah. Because a lot of people
put that on merchandise or something.
Yes.
That's
good. My body was unnatural first, so I don't care. It's safe medication, so I'm going to do it. And then another thing was providing support without overwhelming the patient. There are so many resources now that you can give to a patient, but you don't want to overwhelm them, especially when they're first diagnosed. But to give them something, not to have them go from appointment to appointment, those several months, with absolutely nothing to support them, no resources, no tools. And there was also mentioned early intervention in these other approaches. And they also, I know Stephanie mentioned it in our first debrief, ACT, the acceptance and commitment therapy. So something like that, as far as offering it up to a patient, it's not, you're not crazy, you do have, real pain, but these kind of therapy, treatments or techniques could help you, could be that another tool in your toolbox to help you fight.
Love it.
So it was, a great discussion. There were also, I missed the part about workplace accommodations, but they did share some resources, and I can put that in the comment section.
Was good.
So a great conversation. So
well, we'll definitely and you can find Cheryl, her blog is Arthritis Life, And I know that she is on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, name it, she's there.
She's doing a fabulous job. Yeah,
Very
she's out there.
active. I am positive she has posted about this session.
She
So
has.
we will
Again,
make
tweet.
sure we
Yeah.
retweet, reshare, I don't do TikTok. What do you do on TikTok?
I don't know. She's great on TikTok. I just don't know
what the
how to use
term
it.
is.
Make mini awareness videos. Yeah, some people are really good at it. You know, you have to have a certain personality, I think, to keep up with that too. So
She's awesome, and she does. And
I don't
she's
know how
very
they do it.
outgoing.
It takes a long time for me to make a TikTok. It took me like 3 hours to even make a real one. So I'm like, I can't. So I don't really give props to those people. They just know what to do. Yeah. So
And it
Wow.
comes naturally. Yeah.
yeah.
All right, well,
goes without the
that's where you
trending.
that's where
That's
you
funny.
can find Cheryl. And there you go. We are done. That was a very long debrief, but we got a lot of content out, and that just shows you, I think, how much information there is at these conferences and why we need to have this many people participating. And and plus you notice we don't all go to different ones. We tend to have at least a couple, like maybe every so often we'll have a spare, go here, go there, because it's nice to cover a lot, but also it's nice to have different perspectives, different opinions, different takeaways, because that's again what our organization is all about. All the voices, all the what Stephanie takes away might be completely different than what I take away. And so by sharing and talking to each other, we just continue to learn and be able to ask more questions. And that's what we encourage you, our listeners, to do. If you're watching this, put your comments, put your questions in the chat in YouTube. You can email us, info@aiarthritis.org. You can find us on social media, AiArthritis on all of the platforms. And I think I got everything right, Katie.
Yeah.
And then on YouTube too, it's C. It's got the C because it's like company, I guess, or an organization. C and then the / AiArthritis as well on YouTube is our channel. So that's it. We did it.
Fabulous.
We did it.
Down in the books. I have absolutely no idea what we're seeing tomorrow, or I would give you a preview. I don't know. I have a feeling it'll be something to do with COVID and precision medicine.
Yep.
I don't know. I got a little just a little inkling that might have something to do with that. Anything else to add?
I'm excited
All right.
to see what's next.
Me too. Stephanie, remind everyone where they can find you.
You can find me everywhere at the
Everywhere.
young face of, well, everywhere except, I mean, yeah, I'm on TikTok, but I'm not very good at it. I'm not Cheryl, but you can find me at the young face of arthritis or on Twitter at the young face _RA.
Awesome. And Effie, where can everyone find you?
Yeah. Rising Above RA, Instagram and Twitter. Yeah.
Okay.
Fabulous.
All right, so that's a wrap. Debrief number 2, these will be segmented out so that they will be easily shareable, and we will create some takeaway education materials and connect you with any other resources that we can based on today. Until tomorrow, and debrief number 3, we're signing off. Bye, everyone.
Bye.